Love and emotional attachment can sometimes cloud judgment, leading to harmful consequences. When bonds are formed with individuals who are unstable or abusive, the relationship may become toxic. People often overlook red flags, hoping love will bring positive change. This misguided loyalty can result in significant harm, like emotional trauma or physical danger. In extreme cases, unhealthy attachments have tragic outcomes, leaving lasting scars. Recognizing the difference between nurturing love and harmful dependency is vital to maintaining safety and self-worth. Healthy love uplifts, while unhealthy love destroys. Aloha bonjour, hello hello, hola hujambo, marhaba, nihao namaste. Welcome to Crime Watch Vault. We explore true crime stories, solved and unsolved and intriguing mysteries. We respectfully discuss stories already in the public domain. If you're interested, click the subscribe button to join our community. Sylvia Williams was born and raised in a small Indiana town, surrounded by a loving family. She grew up with two younger siblings and often took on a nurturing role, offering support and guidance. Her parents instilled values of kindness, resilience, and a strong sense of community. Sylvia thrived on these principles, becoming a compassionate and dependable person. She was known for her vibrant personality and warm smile that could light up a room. Sylvia enjoyed volunteering in her community and spent her free time organizing events or helping neighbors. Friends described Sylvia as fiercely loyal and optimistic, someone who always believed in second chances. Despite facing challenges, she maintained a positive outlook and worked hard to create a meaningful life. Her determination to uplift others left a lasting impression on everyone she met. Sylvia's character, built on love and kindness, made her a beloved figure in her community. Sylvia Williams and Charles Goforth met through mutual friends at a local event in Indiana. Sylvia, always open-hearted and kind, was initially charmed by Charles's confidence and humor. Their connection developed quickly, and they soon began spending more time together. Their relationship was intense from the beginning, filled with moments of passion, but also conflict. Charles displayed possessive tendencies, but Sylvia believed he had the potential to change. Her optimism often led her to focus on his good qualities, despite occasional warning signs. Friends and family were concerned about the relationship, noting that Charles's behavior could be unpredictable. Still, Sylvia's caring nature made her determined to support him. She saw his struggles as something they could overcome together, a belief that would eventually lead to devastating consequences. In November 2019, tensions between Sylvia and Charles reached a breaking point. Their relationship, already fraught with conflict, turned violent in an incident that shocked their Indiana community. The tragic series of events unfolded at Sylvia's home during what began as an argument. As tempers flared, the confrontation escalated beyond words. Charles, in a fit of rage, retrieved a firearm and turned it on Sylvia. She was shot multiple times, suffering severe injuries. Despite her critical condition, Sylvia managed to survive the attack, thanks to the quick response of her neighbors and emergency services. Sylvia was rushed to the hospital, where she underwent life-saving surgery. Meanwhile, Charles fled the scene before authorities could apprehend him. His sudden disappearance triggered an intense manhunt. Law enforcement officials worked tirelessly to locate him, piecing together leads from witness statements, forensic evidence, and community tips. Their investigation extended beyond state lines when it was discovered that Charles had fled to Missouri. After several days on the run, authorities finally located Charles hiding out in Missouri. His arrest was carried out without incident, but the case was far from over. Charles was extradited back to Indiana, where he faced charges of attempted unaliving. Sylvia's bravery in recounting the harrowing ordeal played a key role in strengthening the case against Charles. Her detailed account of the attack, coupled with forensic evidence from the scene, painted a clear picture of what had transpired. Investigators also uncovered evidence of prior incidents, suggesting a history of escalating conflict between the two. In Missouri, Charles had sought to avoid capture by staying with acquaintances and keeping a low profile. However, the collaboration between Indiana and Missouri law enforcement agencies ensured that no stone was left unturned. His eventual arrest underscored the efficiency and determination of the officers working the case. Once extradited to Indiana, Charles was charged with attempted unaliving and other related offenses. Prosecutors prepared for a trial that would bring justice for Sylvia and her community. Meanwhile, news of the incident sparked wider discussions about domestic violence and the urgent need for preventative measures to protect vulnerable individuals in volatile relationships. For Sylvia, the journey to recovery, both physical and emotional, was long and challenging. Her survival against all odds inspired many, but it also highlighted the systemic failures that allowed the situation to escalate in the first place. The events of November 2019 remain a powerful reminder of the importance of addressing domestic violence with urgency and compassion. Charles's story begins in Hammond, Indiana, where he grew up in a working-class family. His upbringing was marked by instability, with frequent moves and financial struggles. Those who knew Charles as a child described him as quiet and introverted, often keeping to himself. Despite these qualities, he struggled to stay on the right path, eventually becoming involved in petty crimes during his teenage years. As he grew older, Charles's criminal activities escalated. By his early 20s, he had a record that included theft, drug possession, and several instances of assault. Each conviction painted a troubling picture of a man prone to volatile behavior and poor decision-making. He served time in prison for some of these offenses, but seemed unable or unwilling to reform his ways. Friends and family noted that Charles often had difficulty managing anger, which contributed to many of his legal troubles. Despite occasional efforts to turn his life around, his temper and impulsiveness frequently landed him back in trouble with the law. By the time of the events involving Sylvia, Charles had a history of violence and a reputation that left many questioning how he continued to evade long-term consequences for his actions. His past foreshadowed the tragedy that would later unfold. On November 26, 2019, Charles walked out of jail after posting an $8,000 bond. His release came as a shock to many in the community, considering his history of violence and the severity of the charges he faced. The bond was paid by none other than Sylvia, a move that left friends and family confused and deeply concerned. Sylvia's decision to bail out Charles stemmed from a complicated mix of emotions: loyalty, hope, and a belief that he could change. Despite the traumatic events that had landed him in jail, Sylvia seemed to believe that Charles deserved another chance to turn his life around. She had always been someone who saw the potential for good in others, and perhaps this made her vulnerable to trusting Charles again. After his release, the relationship between Sylvia and Charles took a delicate turn. Sylvia likely hoped for reconciliation and peace, holding on to the belief that their bond could mend itself. Charles, on the other hand, appeared to appreciate her gesture, but struggled to escape the anger and impulsive tendencies that had defined much of his life. On a quiet February morning in 2020, Sylvia Williams began her day in her Hammond, Indiana home. Known for her warmth and kindness, she was a beloved figure in her community. Sylvia often checked in on neighbors and kept a close connection with friends, making her a familiar and cherished presence in the neighborhood. However, this day would take a tragic turn, marking an irreversible moment for her and those who cared for her. Around 11 a.m., several neighbors reported hearing loud noises that sounded like gunshots coming from Sylvia's house. Initially, many dismissed the sounds, thinking it might be construction or some other harmless activity. As the hours passed, concern grew because Sylvia, usually active during the day, had not been seen leaving her house. By late afternoon, one of Sylvia's neighbors, Lisa Carter, became particularly worried. Lisa often chatted with Sylvia and found it strange that her car remained in the driveway and her house appeared unusually quiet. Deciding to check on her, Lisa knocked on the door, but received no response. Feeling uneasy, she cautiously entered the home and was confronted with a devastating scene. Sylvia was lying on the floor, unresponsive, with visible gunshot wounds. Lisa immediately called 911, her voice trembling as she described the horrifying sight. Emergency responders arrived swiftly, securing the scene and transporting Sylvia to the hospital. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize her, but her injuries were too severe. Later that evening, Sylvia succumbed to her wounds, leaving her loved ones and neighbors reeling from the loss. As police began their investigation, they identified clear signs that the shooting was intentional. Evidence collected at the scene pointed to a deliberate and targeted attack. Neighbors recalled the gunshot sounds earlier in the day, but none had seen anyone entering or leaving Sylvia's house. Suspicion quickly fell on Charles, Sylvia's former partner, whose history of violence and conflicts with Sylvia made him the prime suspect. Law enforcement intensified their efforts to locate him, determined to seek justice for Sylvia. Her tragic loss was a painful reminder of the dangers of toxic relationships and left her community mourning a woman who had touched so many lives with her kindness. In the days following Sylvia's tragic unaliving in February 2020, investigators focused their attention on Charles, her former partner. Charles's troubled history with Sylvia and his violent tendencies made him the primary suspect. However, police needed concrete evidence to solidify their case. Surveillance footage from nearby cameras revealed a significant breakthrough. On the morning of the shooting, a vehicle matching Charles's was seen in the vicinity of Sylvia's home. Witnesses also reported spotting a man resembling him loitering in the area hours before the incident. These findings placed Charles near the scene at the crucial time and strengthened investigators' suspicions. As law enforcement ramped up their efforts, Charles went on the run. Authorities issued a warrant for his arrest and began tracking his movements across state lines. Days later, Charles was located in Missouri, hiding at a relative's house. A tactical team surrounded the property and arrested him without incident. He was promptly extradited to Indiana to face charges of attempted unaliving, which were later elevated to first-degree unaliving after Sylvia succumbed to her injuries. During court proceedings, the prosecution presented a compelling case against Charles. They highlighted the surveillance footage, witness statements, and forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene. His history of violence and prior altercations with Sylvia painted a clear picture of motive. The defense argued for leniency, claiming Charles's difficult upbringing and mental health issues contributed to his actions. However, the jury was unconvinced. After a lengthy trial, Goforth was convicted of first-degree unaliving. At sentencing, the judge condemned Charles's actions and noted the devastation he had caused to Sylvia's loved ones and the community. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never harm anyone again. Sylvia's family expressed relief that justice had been served, but remained heartbroken by their loss. The case also sparked discussions about the justice system, as many questioned how a man with Charles's history had been granted bail in the first place. Sylvia's tragic unaliving in February 2020 sent shockwaves through the community, sparking significant public outrage over the legal system. Many questioned how Charles, a violent felon with a documented history of domestic abuse, had been released on bail just months earlier. His release, facilitated by an $8,000 bond, allowed him to return to the same community where he had previously harmed Sylvia. Critics argued that granting bail to individuals with violent histories, especially in domestic violence cases, posed unacceptable risks to victims and communities. Advocates for bail reform demanded stricter policies to prevent similar situations, calling for increased scrutiny of bail decisions in cases involving known threats. Among the most vocal critics was Hammond Mayor Thomas McDermott Jr., who openly condemned the judicial process. McDermott expressed frustration with a system that prioritized procedural norms over public safety, describing Goforth's release as a preventable failure. He emphasized that the justice system must do more to protect victims of domestic violence, pointing to Sylvia's case as a heartbreaking example of what can go wrong. The tragedy fueled broader conversations about the need for systemic change, urging lawmakers to address gaps in domestic violence protections and reassess how bail is granted to violent offenders. Sylvia's story became a rallying point for those seeking justice and reform. Thank you for watching this video. Sylvia Williams' story is a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers of toxic relationships. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay updated on future videos. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next story.